Lonely departure ending a tense 7-day ordeal. The ABC's China correspondent for 5 years, Birtles is now back in Australia.
It's a relief to be back in a country with genuine rule of law.
His posting time cut short by a late-night visit from Chinese officials.
Midnight on Wednesday, the knock at the door came and there were 6 state security police plus a translator.
Last week, Australia's embassy warned him to get out of China, but before he could get on a plane, police barred him from leaving.
That's when this standoff, this diplomatic game of chess really commenced.
Good morning from Shanghai.
And there were 2 pawns. The Australian Financial Review's China correspondent, Michael Smith, was also banned from leaving. Both men ended up taking refuge on Australian diplomatic compounds, Birtles in Beijing and Smith in Shanghai, while Australian and Chinese officials wrangled over their future.
Our embassy has, I think, worked very hard, very diligently in the past few days.
Chinese police said they wanted to discuss Cheng Lei, an Australian journalist working for Chinese state media who disappeared into detention last month.
The whole episode was about harassment.
Diplomats struck a deal. Both journalists would be able to leave China if they agreed to a token interview.
It felt very political, and I very much felt like a diplomatic tussle.
Whatever the motive, the relief is obvious.
It's so good to be home, so happy. I can't say any more at the moment.
And the consequences clear. For the first time in decades, no major Australian media outlet has a journalist left in China. Trust between Australia and China is now at bedrock levels, and that mutual suspicion isn't limited to officials and politicians. China craves understanding for its political system and for its achievements, but gaining that appreciation just became much harder for Australians. Still, the ABC hasn't given up on China.
We'll get straight back on the front foot and be seeking to put correspondents back there.
And neither has Bill Birtles.
Hopefully the winds of change might blow in one way or another and the window to get back there in future at some point reopens.
But for now, the door is slammed shut. Stephen Jedgetts, ABC News, Canberra.
China's always resisted Western ideas about media freedom, but has mostly allowed foreign reporters to chart its astonishing rise from a poor developing nation to a formidable global power. Until now, the ABC had been a constant witness, but there's no indication if or when it'll ever be allowed back. Here's National Affairs correspondent Greg Chennett.
When the bamboo curtain lifted for a glimpse, Australians were among the first to slip behind it.
There's no need for very long discussions.
So began a long era of listening, watching and reporting on China.
The city, with its 7 million inhabitants, runs on bicycles.
In 1973, Paul Raphael became the ABC's first Peking-based correspondent.
They appeared well-fed and cheerful.
Dozens would follow as reporters, camera operators and producers. Through 47 turbulent years, the communist regimes tolerated, even if not enjoyed, the telling of its stories to the world.
Tens of thousands of people continue to march through the streets of Beijing. The Chinese authorities had had enough.
The regime's tension with Western media has been a constant, especially with its tendency to expose human rights abuses. But the flight of reporters Birtles and Smith marks a turning point and a breaking point.
We have to realise that we're dealing with a sort of a renegade authoritarian state that will do anything to cement the power of Xi Jinping.
By expulsion, visa cancellation or volition, the ranks of foreign media have been shrinking for months. Arbitrary detention is a risk these days highlighted in Australia's official travel advice. Bill Birtles and his fellow traveller may have avoided it, in no small part because of the intervention by the ambassador to Beijing and his team.
It is alarming when you see exit bans placed on Australian journalists.
It is disappointing that after many years, Australia will not have a media organisation present in China.
We always welcome foreign journalists. China protects the legitimate rights of the journalists.
The relationship's a mess, never worse in 30 years. But Maurice Payne's ruled out tit-for-tat expulsions of Chinese reporters here, focused on diplomacy salvaging whatever's left intact. This is not so much about Australia as it is about control. With every escalation, China's signalling its determination to project its image and its message on its own terms. There's something to be gained in that for Beijing and something to be lost too.
Come on, this is China.
Including the good stuff, like China's sufferings and setbacks.
The whole place has been destroyed.
Its near miraculous economic transformation. Its culture and traditions.
These performances are so important.
Over spectacularly in a blackout of unknown duration. Greg Jennett, ABC News, Canberra.
COVID numbers are staying down in Victoria. There have been 55 new cases reported, a slight increase, but the Premier's described the trend as promising. Dan Andrews has also announced the creation of a new localised tracing team to help identify and contain flare-ups.
This clinic in Altona North was one of several in Melbourne's west that saw a spike in COVID cases last week. Frustrated by the state's contact tracing response, local doctors took control.
The contact tracing until recently has been woeful. And I don't blame the people doing it because they're fabulous people doing a fabulous job. It's just that the numbers were massive and the whole public health response in Victoria had been dumbed down.
Doctors like former AMA President Mukesh Hakarwal reached out to the Health Department and local council to help manage positive cases. The group also connecting with non-English speaking communities in the area.
We know the people who are infected, we know their connections, we know the community, and we know how we can make this happen.
Victoria's contact tracing system has been plagued by massive delays in reaching close contacts.
Contact tracing was disaster for me as a GP. I remember I gave 2 contradicted advice to the patient, a student from Attaqua. Friday, I told them, you're negative, you can do whatever you want because you don't have symptoms. And Monday, I contacted them and said, please, no, you can't because you were in contact with a positive case.
Now the state is setting up suburban response units across Melbourne.
When you get to a stage where numbers are very low and you want to keep them low and the strategy is depending on you keeping them low, then you can devolve out and you can have that really quick, localised response.
Officials from Melbourne are also being sent to Sydney to learn from their New South Wales counterparts.
Contact tracing is the only way we can safely reopen this state, and Daniel Andrews has stuffed it as badly as he stuffed hotel quarantine.
Education about COVID-19 within local communities is a major issue. Local doctors say too many people are underplaying the significance of coronavirus, while others are refusing to get a test over fears of the social consequences of a positive diagnosis.
We have to put the issue of COVID as a community issue, not individual issue. It's not your problem, it's your problem as a part of our community.
There were 55 new cases today, taking the all-important 2-week average to 78.6, but there were fewer than 9,000 tests, the lowest number in months.
It's really important. If you need a test, get a test. We can come out of this lockdown earlier.
And the Premier has confirmed restrictions could be eased sooner if case numbers drop faster than anticipated. Richard Willingham, ABC News, Melbourne.
A West Australian nurse who volunteered to fly to Melbourne to help with its coronavirus outbreak has been infected. She's in hotel quarantine along with 6 of her colleagues.
Thank you very much. This is a great announcement today.
It's been just over 3 weeks since this airport farewell from the Health Minister. One of the nurses who volunteered to help Victoria's fight against its COVID-19 outbreak has contracted the virus herself while working in an aged care facility. Her symptoms are said to be mild. 6 of her WA colleagues were also working at the same facility. They've tested negative but are considered close contacts and are now all in hotel quarantine in Melbourne.
When they volunteered to put themselves in harm's way, they were told that should they contract COVID-19, then they would be airlifted home. And that's clearly not happened.
I understand there's a belief that such an offering was made. I haven't been made aware of that and I haven't been able to confirm that, but I can say that we will consider all options.
The Minister says at this stage he can't rule out the possibility the nurses could be required to complete 2 weeks of hotel quarantine in Melbourne, followed by another 2 weeks of quarantine in Perth. But he's also considering chartering a special flight to get the nurses home sooner.
I'm taking advice from the Chief Health Officer and the State Emergency Coordinator just to make sure we do the right thing.
The Nurses Federation says the nurses always expected to quarantine in Perth for 2 weeks upon their return, but it expected a speedier response from the government if one of them tested positive.
If they did have a plan, they would have told the nurses what that plan was yesterday. And they're still scrambling around trying to figure out how they're going to bring these nurses home.
The Minister says a plan should be finalised within 48 hours. Frances Bell, ABC News.
The New South Wales Health Minister says 2 Sydney emergency departments won't be affected by more than 100 health workers going into isolation. More staff connected to Concord and Liverpool hospitals have become infected with coronavirus.
For a premier in a pandemic, this is as close as it gets to business as usual. On the South Coast, announcing a new hospital for Shell Harbour.
This is really about saying to the community, not only are we going to provide you with world-class health services, but in the process there will be 2,800 jobs created from building this hospital.
While attention is paid there, the Health Minister is trying to play down concern about an outbreak of COVID at 2 Sydney hospitals.
The fact that we've had a very small number of health staff who have also fallen victim to COVID is not unexpected.
2 more health workers from Concord Hospital's emergency department have tested positive. So there's now 7 cases connected to the cluster from Concord and Liverpool hospitals. 100 workers across both hospitals are also in isolation. Concord Hospital has been forced to cancel all elective surgery this week and will close to visitors. But the Health Minister maintains staff will be backfilled.
The New South Wales health system is the 10th biggest business in the country. There's 140,000 staff. Yes, we certainly do have enough staff.
Health has also issued an alert ordering people to isolate immediately if they ate in the bistro at Oatlands Golf Club on Friday night, went to Plus Fitness in Epping on Saturday morning, or at Paperboy Cafe in Concord on Sunday morning. Overall, there have been 9 new cases recorded in New South Wales. The source of one infection is unknown, while there are 2 more cases connected to the CBD cluster. That includes another student at King Koppel Rose Bay. She's a boarder, so now boarding students in years 7 to 10 have been sent home to isolate. There is good news, though, for New South Wales students boarding in Queensland. They can come home for the holidays and will be exempt from quarantining when they return north for Term 4. Ashley Raper, ABC News.
A man has died after being attacked by a shark on the southern end of the Gold Coast. The man in his 50s was attacked while surfing at Greenmount Beach at Coolangatta late in the afternoon. Lifeguards and bystanders rushed in to try to help him.
Lifeguards noticed some commotion in the surf and some surfers helping another surfer after being attacked by a shark.
I looked and I saw a board with what looked like teeth marks in it.
The man died from critical leg injuries. Detectives have searched the offices of former disability care company Integrity Care over the death of Adelaide woman Anne-Marie Smith. Police also raided an Adelaide home belonging to 2 directors of the company, which employed the carer now charged with Miss Smith's manslaughter.
It's not the first time this office has been searched, but today the raid on Integrity Care's Edwardstown office was different. Detectives seized boxes of documents and digital evidence relating to Anne-Marie Smith's care.
We're interested in how that care was managed and delivered and what processes were in place to ensure that Annie and people like her got the best care possible.
Detectives say some staff are refusing to cooperate with the investigation.
The most tragic circumstances, yet some people see fit to answer no questions at all or to provide any information that could stop this ever happening again.
Ms Smith had cerebral palsy and died in April. Police allege she'd been neglected and was living in degrading circumstances. Support worker Rosa Maione has been charged with manslaughter. The company that hired her, Integrity Care SA, was banned from operating under the NDIS last month. But police say it might still be providing other services.
All the markings have been taken down. The insides of the company suggest that it could still be operating and providing care to other people.
Detectives also focused on the home of two of Integrity Care's directors, Philip John Greenland and Amy June Collins. Police also revealed they now know who was driving Ms Smith's car. Detectives will be available to chat tonight in a special phone-in. Any employees, past or present, of Integrity Care or people with information are being urged to make contact. Natasha Kalios, ABC News, Adelaide.
Police are investigating whether an aggressive pet dog inflicted the injuries on a man whose body was found in the Perth suburb of Morley. Officers say the cause of death won't be known until after an autopsy, but neighbours believe the dog, understood to be a Rottweiler, was responsible.